Hello everyone and welcome back to Age of Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar. And I am excited today because in this video it's going to kickstart a brand new series on the channel, and that is going to be how to start an army series. So essentially I'm going to cover every army in Age of Sigmar and do a video on them on saying how to start the army. Now that I've completed my why play videos for each army as a whole, I'm breaking down the sub-allegiances. As I got one for each army, I thought it's a perfect time to start a series on how to actually start those armies, in my honest opinion. At first this series was going to be reviewing just the start collecting boxes in Age of Sigmar. However, as there are a lot of those reviews already out there, I thought it would be more useful for you as a whole if I made this into a series of videos on how to start the many armies of Age of Sigmar. And as part of these videos I will of course be talking about the start collecting boxes for the armies that actually have them, as Games Workshop makes them seem like they are the perfect way to start those armies, but are they really? And that's something I'll be covering in this series of videos. And with the introduction of this series out of the way, let us get on with this video, and that's actually going to be our first one, like I mentioned, and it will of course be how to start Slaves to Darkness. And the last thing I just want to say is a shout out to my Patreon. So this is going to be my Morgasts, which is Sandback, and Johnathan H and Fliq. We then also have my Vampires, which is Amir, Martinez, Rouse321, Max T and David A. And then my Necromancers, of course, Jacq.l, RadiationRiley, AW77, Dice Sagas, WolfNick, Michal W and Quad. So a quick shout out to you guys for all your fantastic work and support on the channel. As I've said many times before, wasn't for my patrons, wouldn't be able to make these videos, and that would mean I wouldn't be able to make as many videos to try and help as many people get into this hobby as possible. So a huge shout out to you guys. Right now, on with the video. So first thing I want to say is, if you're still wondering why would you play Slaves to Darkness, or you're still trying to decide on your army, please check out my video on just that, on why play Slaves to Darkness in my How to Choose an Army series. Go there. Have a look at all the videos. Like I said, I made a why play for every single army now, and I help you find your army. If you're still wondering why I play Slaves to Darkness, check that out first. But essentially, why would you play them? Because they are the coolest army outside of death, and they are led by the epic character of Archaon, the ever-chosen Grand Marshal of the Apocalypse himself. And it is, to be honest, a very deep army with lots of options on how to collect and play them. And it's also, in my honest opinion, the best value army out there, as you can use Slaves of Darkness units and models in 5 battle tomes, because you've got the Slaves of Darkness battle tome, and then you can use it on each of the God battle tomes as well. So you know, Khorne, Slaanesh, Nurgle and Tzeentch. So really good value for money there. And also, if you would like a more in-depth review of the Slaves of Darkness, please see my playlist for them, which is the most in-depth Slaves to Darkness army review on YouTube, and is actually nearly 20 hours long, which is incredibly in-depth. Just in case you're wondering why I may be generalising units here and stuff, go there for more details. And the first thing I want to start with as part of this review is going to be reviewing the start collecting box for Slaves to Darkness, because like I mentioned at the start of this video, that's one of the go-to areas people look for. It doesn't matter if you're experienced or you're unexperienced, you're brand new to the hobby, we've been doing it for a while. The start collecting box just seems like the natural thing to go for in terms of starting a new army. Of course, it's in the name. But like I said, they're not all worth it. So let us talk about the Slaves to Darkness one. So it's going to be £60, and what you get in it is going to be all the new Slaves to Darkness models that came out about a year ago, and that's all those models apart from, of course, the endless spells. And it's going to cost you £60. So what do you get? You get one leader, which of course is the Chaos Northern Karkadrak, which is the rhino lizard dinosaur type thing, in case you're very new. And then you get one battle line if option, and I say battle line if, and when I use that term, it means these guys are battle line if you have certain thing in order, which is going to be the 5 Chaos Knights you get in the box. And they are going to be battle line if your army is just Slaves to Darkness. So it's a very easy box to tick there. Then you also get another battle line, which is 10 Chaos Warriors. Now this unit of 10 Chaos Warriors can be split into 2 units of 5, i.e. making 2 battle line units if you would like to make your value there. It's also going to be a total of 570 points in this box, which is a good starting amount. If you and your buddies are looking at doing a bit of a league on slowly building armies, one of the things you may look towards doing is your first battles be about 500 points. So very small battles, but this is about 500 points. So it's a nice target there, and it's a good step towards getting to that 1,000 points in your army. Now, something else I want to do with these Start Collecting Box reviews, of course, as part of this series, is talk about how good value they are, right? Now, the Slaves of Darkness one is a bit of an interesting one because these models currently, date of recording, cannot be bought separately, despite being out for like a year, cannot be bought separately. So, what I decided to do was to compare them to the older models, so that's like the older sculpts and everything else, and that's not a really fair comparison, but when I added it all up, it was about £60, to be honest with you, and when these models get made separately, I can guarantee almost it will be more than £60, right? That Chaos Lord and Karkadrak in my calculations here, I put as, I believe, £22.50. They'll probably make that thing at least £25, maybe a bit more, depending on how greedy they're feeling, really, at that one, to be all honest with you. And those Chaos Knights will be more expensive than 5 standard Chaos Knights, so more than half the box for 10 of those, and the same with the Warriors as well, because to be honest with you, they are really nice sculpts, and this Start Collecting box for myself is my favourite Start Collecting box there is out there, as I think it is the best looking one. Of course, I love the Skeleton Horde Start Collecting box, I love the Flesh Eater Court Start Collecting box, those Death ones, of course I like them, but I have to say, Slaves of Darkness one, as I've said many times, especially if you watch my Slaves of Darkness, like I said, a long in-depth review, I absolutely love these models, absolutely love those Chaos Warrior sculpts, absolutely amazing, really nicely tie into the older sculpts as well, so they don't feel out of place there, and the same with the Chaos Knights, and I've recently just finished my Chaos Knight units, which, in my colour scheme of the white armour and purple, it was hell to paint, if I'm all honest with you, but they are absolutely fantastic and beautiful models now that I look at them in my cabinet. And then the big bad leader you get, which is the Chaos Lord on Karkadrak, is an astounding model. One of my favourite new models Games Workshop has came up with for sure. In all honesty with you, it's beautiful. And at first my opinion of it was like, it's lovely, I've painted up well, but it just doesn't really work well in the game. After using it quite a few times in the game now, that Chaos Lord on Karkadrak is a beast. He's quite hard to kill unless the enemy wants to throw the kitchen sink at it. And he can do a lot of damage if you buff him up right, which is really, really cool to see that a really nice model. You may spend a lot of time in care painting, probably the most time you will spend in any of these models from this Start Collecting box, will actually last a considerable amount of time on the table. So yeah, absolutely fantastic there. And then just something else I want to say about the Start Collecting box is that, right, so obviously £60 from Games Workshop. Obviously, go to third retailers. Can't recommend that enough. Not sponsored by any of them, but you'll just get an automatic discount of, you'll probably be able to get it for, I don't know, at least £48. Again, if you're watching this in another country apart from the UK, I apologise I haven't got the dollars for you and everything, but I'm sure you can work that out yourself. So, is this Start Collecting box worth it? My honest opinion, yes. And that's not just saying because I love the models and I'm quite biased towards it. I'm saying it because Chaos Warriors are a good battle line. Now, there's a conversation to have in Slaves of Darkness saying that, why did you take Chaos Warriors? Chaos Marauders are just better. But God knows I don't know why Games Workshop made Chaos Marauders the basic of the basic, more powerful than the goddamn Chaos Warriors, but they decided to do that anyway, probably to sell all their old sculpts of those Chaos Marauders. That's my opinion of it. But what I will say is that at the moment, true, they are better than Chaos Warriors. You would take Chaos Marauders over Chaos Warriors. But what I will say to that, Chaos Marauders at the moment are, their War Scroll is ridiculous. I think it needs to be fixed. Is it the most broken thing in the game? No. But is it pretty much broken within themselves, or at least too powerful? Yes. Essentially what makes them really good is that their offense is pretty good, and their saving capability can be very good, and they only fail charges on a double one most of the time. And of course you could re-roll that for a CP. So they're not really a fair comparison. So chuck them out of the way, and by the time you're watching this, they may have been nerfed anyway. So that's why I don't want to focus too much on them. But your Chaos Warriors are a good battle line. I think they'll maybe get cheaper because they're 90 points for 5 of them. And really you want to have more than 5 so they can get reroll save rolls in their Chaos Legion ability, I think it's called. Because then they have a 4-up save rerolling. Again, if you put additional buffs, there's ways to make it a 3-up save rerolling if you really want to. And doing like mortal wounds back to the enemy, i.e. go Nurgle to do all that stuff. But standardly, a 4-up save rerolling in a unit of 10. A 5+ mortal wound save as well, and then they also have 2 wins each, which makes them pretty goddamn tough. And if you take them in a way, let's say Host the Everchosen, for example, where they don't take Battle Shock, now they've got pretty damn good of just hanging around for a very, very long time. Plus, if you can make ways to make the enemy minuses to hit and stuff, you know, they can be around for a long time. So they're a solid, what I call classical battle line. Then moving on to the next unit in the Start Collecting box, which is the Chaos Knights, which personally for me, I run these more than Chaos Warriors. I tend to take units of 5 Chaos Warriors just to hold objectives and stuff like just at the back or screen. But the reason why I don't really take too many most of the time is because I just have a huge love for cavalry and I love Chaos Knights and I love it that they can be battle line. And essentially how I run them is with Lances, and in this Start Collecting box they only come with the option for Lances, apart from the leader that you can give a flail, but you wouldn't because the flail is crap. Which as a Slaanesh player, it pains me to say that. But what I will say is that, like, you can only use the Lancers obviously because that's what they're modelled with, but obviously you can do conversions to give them the ensorcelled weapons if you'd like to, and even if you don't, because they've got like swords like in scabbards and stuff on them and everything like that, just chat to your opponent. If it's like a buddy of yours, just say, hi, do you mind if I use them with enscrolled weapons? You know, I can only build them with the Lancers and they've got like swords and stuff sheathed. Do you mind if I just use them with the other weapon option? So I don't actually have to buy and build like the older Chaos Knights. And I'm sure they're going to say, yeah. The only reason why, firstly, I was like, you can only use them with Lancers is because, you know, you take them to the tournament, all that sort of thing. If you don't actually convert them to have the enscrolled weapons, it can get a bit funny. So, absolutely. But to be fair, the Lancers, like I say, I think is the best because instead of your Chaos Knights being mediocre, not too bad, alright, all the way through, I'd rather them just be either crap, where if they don't charge, they just can't fight their way out of a paper bag, which is an expression I've used several times to describe them, or when they charge, brilliant, -2 rend, 2 damage each, lovely stuff. So yeah, huge fan on Chaos Knights, and the models are just beautiful, aren't they? So yeah, big plus there. And then talking about the leader, Chaos Level card track, like I've already said, really survivable, can make him even more survivable, can make him more offensive, and it's also just like a little problem for your opponent to deal with because 230 points, obviously a decent amount of points, but not a huge sink, and it can be an effective flanking unit, or you can use them to buff up your knights or other units as well, and he is very fast. So yes, I do like him as well. So now that I have reviewed the Start Collecting box, when we move on to now how to start your Slaves to Darkness army, what I will say is it really depends on how you want to build it, because there are many different sub-allegiances for your Slaves to Darkness, right? You have the Ravagers, you have the Kabulis, you have the Despoilers, you have the Host of the Everchosen, you have Knights of the Empty Throne, and then you have the Idolators. So that is 6 different ways to play the Slaves to Darkness, and by deciding which one you want to go for can really make your Slaves to Darkness play very nice and differently, which can make it a very diverse army. But it's also going to make you choose what units you want to put in those different sub-allegiances. So it does play a big part in there, also depending on what mark you want to give it. So what mark do you want to give your Slaves to Darkness army? In that sense, I mean, what Chaos God keyword do you want to give it? Does everything want to be Khorne? If you want to be Nurgle, etc. And what I do say is don't feel like you have to paint your army to fit the keyword. I mean, it's nice, obviously, isn't it? If you're playing a Martel Slaanesh army, and it's nice if your army's all built and painted as Slaanesh, but it's not a necessity. So don't feel trapped or anything by that thing. I just want to say quite early. But so what I'm trying to say is there is no perfect ideal way to just go, this is the one Slaves to Darkness army you always want to take. It's going to just be good. These are the things you want to start by taking this army, and that's it, and that's the end of the video. Because there's so much down to personal choice. But what I can give you is what I've learned from my experience on units that you're going to make the most out of by taking to the battlefield, rather than units that you might buy and collect and then never really see any time on the table. So now that I've started that topic, what I want to mention now is going to be talking about auto-includes in an army. So this is maybe a term that you may have heard before, you may know what it means, you may not know what it means. So that means that when you build your army list, in certain armies there tends to be a certain model or a certain unit that you will take in 9 out of 10 times, no matter what the rest of your list looks like. And Slaves of Darkness is no exception. There are some auto-includes that I would say definitely take, and there are some that I'd say they're more situational. So the ones that I'd say definitely include, you've got Be'lakor, and if you're wondering who that is, that's like the name demon prince you have in the army, as he adds so much to your army by essentially not really buffing your army, but by debuffing the enemy's army. He's got a way to make an enemy unit. I'm not going into too much details now. Again, if you want more reviews on these units, please check out those very in-depth videos that I mentioned. But what he can do is he can make an enemy unit for 1, maybe 2 turns, do bugger all, but every time it wants to do something, in most circumstances, it has to roll dice. On a 5 up, it can do it, and if it doesn't roll 5 up, it can't do it, which can really stuff your enemies' strategies up their arsehole really with that, and it can be absolutely great when you go against those very competitive armies and see their plans all fold in because you made their one big powerful thing that's the army centre around not be able to do much. So yeah, he's absolutely great. He's also a 2-cast wizard, which you don't actually have many in the army that are 2-cast wizards. You have Be'lakor, you have a Jacq.l Gaunt Summoner, and then you also have Archaon himself. And the Jacq.l Gaunt Summoner is, I tend to not really run Jacq.l, so he's not really for me, and I know you can bring him to bring pink horrors, but I'm not really into that jankiness at all. So Be'lakor is great for 2 casts because you also get a good spell of him that can make the enemy -1 to wound, and then the spell lore for the Slaves of Darkness is particularly potent and particularly good as well. There's ways to make the enemy fight last, there's ways to teleport, there's ways to make the enemy not be able to move, there's lots of cool things you can do within that spell lore that can be game changing. And what I will say is that all those spells, off the top of my head, only have a 12-inch range, so the offensive spells are great, but you need to be quite close to the enemy to get them off. And a Chaos Sorcerer Lord is great, and we'll get to him in a moment, but he's quite squishy. So if you can have your Be'lakor, who also doesn't take rend, he can afford to be close to the enemy, and he can be pretty solid in combat for what he is. So more chance of him being close to the enemy. He's faster as well, he can fly, everything else, so he can get those spells off more times than some of the, like I say, weaker spellcasters you have in your army. And the other part of that is, like when we talk about the Chaos Sorcerer Lord as an example, has fantastic spell on his War Scroll, which means he wants to be cast that a lot of the time and not a spell from the spell lore. So Be'lakor being able to cast 2 spells and only having one of his own unique spell on his War Scroll means he's got that flexibility of, I've casted my unique spell, let's say you want to get that off, and now it's like, what do I do with my other spell? What other spells can I cast? I can use the one that I picked from the spell lore from Slaves of Darkness. So it works very well there. So Be'lakor auto-include 9 out of 10 times, if not 10 out of 10 times at the moment on how he works, I would say. So yeah, fantastic choice. And I know that he's resin, and I know you have to order him off the internet unless you get it from like Warhammer World, but it's worth the wait really. I don't know what more I can say. With him, he was an absolute pain to build because there was a lot of cleaning up to do, but once I had him built, he wasn't really too much of a pain to paint. And was one of the first like demons I painted in my Slaves of Darkness army, so made quite a nice change there. So yeah, you've got him. What are the other auto-includes in the army? I would say that you also want to pick yourself up a Chaos Lord on foot, because he has a fantastic command ability where he can make one of your units parley and attack twice in the combat phase. Of course, there's ranges and everything like that. Like that unit has to be wholly within 12 inches of the Chaos Lord on foot at the start of the combat phase to be able to trigger it, but that's fairly easy enough done. He's not very fast, but you can make him auto run 6 if you spend a CP and all these other things. He doesn't need to charge into combat, he just needs to keep up with all your other killy stuff. And that's something that is almost an auto include, not as much as Be'lakor, because it depends very much on your army, but even if you want to take lots of Chaos Knights, so you'll be getting a lot of impact charge there, the Lancers, and you want to make the most of that charge. So being able to make them attack twice when they charge can be crucial. Even making a Chaos Lord on Karkdrak or Manticore attack twice can be very good as well. Making a unit of 10 Chaos Chosen Pile attack twice, fantastic as well, of course. That's a lovely one. I've done that myself and it worked really well. Lovely way to slice the Terrorgeist. And what is the biggest way to use this, I can't not mention, is in an Archaon list. So in an Archaon list, which is usually taken host the Everchosen, you're going to want to have this little Chaos Lord basically just tag alongside Archaon all the time. So your Archaon is attacking twice in the combat phase. Of course, Commander B, it's going to cost you a CP, but when you've got Archaon in that list, you can really generate quite a few command points to the point where it's not really much of a problem to get it off all the time. So it's fantastic making a Vanguard attack twice, even though they can do that once per game anyway. There's lots of units that can make the most out of this, making Marauders do it twice. You know, so many different uses out of it. And the best thing is, this guy's 110 points. So you're basically just paying that for this command ability, right? But that's a good command ability. This guy outside of that command ability has 7 wounds, so he's pretty tanky, a 4-up save, and then if he gets tagged into combat, he can do some work. He's got 3 attacks that do 2 damage each, and then he's also got 3 more attacks that do 1 damage each, but 6s to hit do mortal wounds in addition. And he can always make himself attack twice as well, if he wanted to use his own command ability on himself. And I've used him to clear a unit of 10 Iron Drakes before, which I know isn't the hardest thing to kill, but not the easiest. So you can see how useful it can be, which is why I put him down as a auto-include. I would say 9 out of 10 times for him. Be'lakor, you know, pretty much 10 out of 10, and then this guy 9 out of 10, or maybe 8 out of 10 times. Really, really effective as long as you can have the points left over to do it. Right, going on to what I'd say is now a almost auto-include. As I say, Be'lakor and the Chaos Lord on foot are pretty much an auto-include. What's an almost auto-include? Now, I would put this down as the 2 Chaos Sorcerer Lords because they are really, really good and they have some nice tech there. And then the Chaos Warshrine. So let me start with the first Sorcerer Lord on foot, who we kind of mentioned already. And like I say, he's more squishy than Be'lakor, but he's a hell of a lot of points cheaper. He is 110 points compared to Be'lakor, who was 240, right? So he's less than half his points. He has a fantastic spell on his War Scroll, which I mentioned, which I believe is called Demonic Power. You can let one of your units, and this has to be, you know, Mortal Stays Darkness unit, be able to reroll failed hit rolls and reroll failed wound rolls, which is fantastic. You put that on a unit of Chaos Chosen, they become absolute blenders. Put on Chaos Knights, they even become that much more reliable on the charge, because when Chaos Knights need to charge, they need to wipe out whatever they're charging, right? Because they don't want to be stuck in combat if they've got those lances. So pretty important there. So that is fantastic. Also, can't forget to mention how useful it is on things like Vanguard, and of course, the big man himself, Archaon. Absolutely fantastic, right? But that's not all, because the second part of what he gets is a reroll save ability, which I believe is called like Oracle Vision or something like that. And what that means is picks one of your Slaves of Darkness units. Again, I think it has the Mortal Slaves of Darkness unit, and then they can reroll their failed save rolls, which is just fantastic, because then you can make Archaon on obviously a 3-up save, rerolling fails. You can make even, like I say, Chaos Knights rerolling fails. You can make your Chaos Chosen, who are really effective, like I say, pretty blender unit, but are victimized, let's just say, if they want to get shot off the board. You know, they will die fairly quickly. So it can be really useful just to make your units that you really rely on survive that much longer. It's generally a really good ability, and the best part of it, it's not a spell or anything like that, you just get it. So the enemy can't unbind you or anything like that. Let's say you're going against a Lord Croak build as an example, or a Techless build, or a Nagash build, something like that, Arcan build, and you're used to just going, oh, well, I'm probably just going to get all my magic basically declined by the enemy, and I'm bound. So unfortunately, I won't be able to get this ability off. Like I say, this isn't a spell, it's an ability. So those Lord Croaks of the world won't be able to stop this going off, which means that if you had an Archaon versus a Croak list, let's say, and you go, well, I really want to make sure Archaon can at least rerolls some of his save rolls, so you try and do a Mystic Shield, ain't going to work. So the Chaos Sorcerer Lord on foot is useful even if he doesn't get his magic off. which is a really important thing to say, and only for 110 points. Absolute steal, and makes his way into probably at least 4 out of 5 Slaves of Darkness lists in general. The next one to talk about is going to be the Chaos Sorcerer Lord on Manticore. So just Chaos Sorcerer Lord but Manticore, but his spell is different. His spell is a Horde Clearer spell, so that means that basically you pick an enemy unit within 18 inches and then you roll a dice for each model in the unit. On a 5 up they take a mortal wound, on a 6 they take D3 mortal wounds, and that's not the model you rolled for, that's just the unit in total. So you pick a unit of 60 grots, 60 dice, every 5 is a mortal wound, every 6 is D3 mortal wounds. It is your Horde Clearer spell for the army. I really can't reiterate how important it is. If you know you're going against a Horde army, take that Chaos Sorcerer Lord on Manticore without any doubt. The only thing I would say, maybe hold off on it, is if you're going against a Horde army that has great unbind potential, as this is still a spell where you still need a 7, unless you go certain ways and tech to try and build into it, you get no pluses to your cast, right? So it's not reliable, but if you do get it off, will clear most hordes out there, absolutely for sure. And then the other thing he gets is the reroll save ability he can put on someone as well, like the Chaos Sorcerer Lord on foot, which makes him very vital. Okay, and then going on to the next, like I said, auto include is going to be a Chaos War Shrine. Now, why would I make this thing a semi-auto include? Because I hear a lot of people go like, oh, you always want one. You always want one in your army because it's so good. So generically, it's nice because it gives a bubble effect of every one of your units, wholly within 18 inches of it, as long as they are Mortal Slaves of Darkness, a 6-up mortal wound or wound save. So, basically a death save or ward save, whatever you want to call it, wholly within 18 inches of it, which can be very useful. Again, you may go, well, my Chaos Warriors, my Chaos Knights have their shields, they give them the 5-up mortal wound save anyway. Why do I really bother? Because it's great against normal wounds, right? Because I've had it where I've got a Chaos on the board and I'm so used to him having like a 4-up mortal wound save and everything else and 4-up spell save, he's loving life. But if I fail his normal saves, it's suddenly a realization that I've had it where it's like he just takes a flat 20 damage and there's nothing I can do. So they have a Chaos War Shrine, which is a very sad time, if I'm honest with you, especially when it's one-shotted by a Carnosaur, which happened on the tournament I put on the channel. It was absolutely horrendous. But there is when the Chaos War Shrine shines as a whole, right? Because he just gives that big bubble. It's a nice big bubble as well. The Chaos War Shrine, if it gets into combat, it can hold its own really as well. I think it has overall like 8 attacks that do 2 damage, 2 different attack profiles, the big like beasties that hold the shrine up, and then the basically the priest on top that does damage with his like sacrificial dagger or whatever it is, trying to remember. But the other part of why you would take him is because, of course, the prayers. And he has got some fantastic prayers. A lot of them are quite repeated in themselves, if I'm honest. But the 3 prayers that are important are the Undivided one. Surprise, surprise, as Undivided is not the strongest way to play Slaves of Darkness. And what that does is you pick one of your units and it allows you to, obviously a unit that's in range, and it allows you to reroll failed hit rolls and failed wound rolls. So, like the Chaos Sorcerer Lord on foot ability, right? But this is a prayer, so your enemy cannot unbind it. The catch, you need to roll 1d6 and you need to roll 3, which is the odds are in your favour, but this is Warhammer, so that means absolutely fuck all. Like 9 out of 10 times, but it's great if you get it off right. The other one it has is a Zeech one, which is great because then you can reroll failed save rolls. And then if you do a prayer from a god by the War Shrine, if you pick a unit that also has that god mark as well, so if it's a Zeech prayer as an example, and you put the Zeech reroll saves on them, you're also going to give them then the, I believe it's a 4-up against endless spells and spells. So it gives them an additional benefit. So the War Shrine is great, and what I like about it is, even if you don't get that prayer off, which is very frustrating, it's still going to be of use. It's not just that's its thing and it doesn't do anything else. It's still going to be a use because it's going to give that like protection of the Dark Gods 6-up ward save ability. Wholly within 18 inches of it at the start, but it will get weakened the more damage it takes. But where this guy becomes practically an auto-include is when you take a Nurgle marked Slaves of Darkness. And it's something that I personally don't want to do because everyone who runs Slaves of Darkness, most people go Nurgle because it's on paper just the most easy one to do well with, which is why I find it not attractive, because it's over popular and it's meant to be default, the easy way to play Slaves of Darkness, which I'm not really a fan of. But if you want to go with it, the War Shrine is for you. And, you know, don't think anything bad about that. That's just my own personal opinions. I don't like playing popular armies generally, right? So the Chaos War Shrine, what it will do is its own prayer, pick a noble unit, and it will get to reroll failed wound rolls and also +1 to its save. So you can make Archaon have a a 2-up save now. So if you put some Mystic Shield on himself as well, 2-up save, roll a 1. Absolutely brilliant, right? And then also you can make a lot of your 4-up save things in your army, 3-up saves, really, really useful, especially making you more tanky. Like I mentioned at the start, Chaos Warriors now are a 3-up save, make them reroll their save rolls as well. Do an absolutely solid job there, especially with a 5-up mortal wound save and 2 wounds apiece, and ways to make them not run away in Battle Shock, right? So very, very solid there, and you can use it in lots of other different ways. So that is what I'd say about the Chaos War Shrine. And then when it comes to the other units, I would really say it's up to flavour. Like I said, I can't give you, this is the best way to start and build your Slaves of Darkness army. I can just give you advice from what I've learned from playing the army a lot and just, you know, my own personal experience in starting the army as well. For over like the last, I've probably been collecting Slaves of Darkness for about 3 years now, something like that. And I used to do it about 5 years ago as well with a different army I had. So this is where, like I said, it comes to your own personal flavour now. But what I will say is I want to talk about the 6 different sub-allegiances, right? Because that, as I mentioned, can really decide on what units you want to include. So if we look at first the Ravagers, this is an army that's all about heroes that can do damage in your army that are not named characters or demons. So that basically what I'm trying to say to you is you want to go Chaos Lord heavy in Ravagers, because every single one of your heroes that obviously isn't a named character and isn't a demon print can take a command trait. So you can make your heroes very, very killy. In a list building that I'm recording slowly at the moment, I've talked about my list of Ravagers that has many Chaos Lords. When I mean many, I believe it has 5. And then also you can change who's the general throughout the game with those heroes. So it's very cool. And it gives you more chance to roll on the Eye of the Gods table, right? Which is absolutely awesome. So you want to go mortal hero heavy, essentially, in Ravagers. But then there is a second part, and that is you can summon units onto the battlefield, and those units can be 10 Marauders every one of your turns, or it can be a unit of cultists up to 10 models, or it can be 5 Marauder Horsemen, right? So you're going to want to summon Marauders, because like I just mentioned, Marauders will probably get changed, but talking about Marauders right now means you can summon 10 Marauders onto the battlefield, which then means that when they come onto the battlefield, if they're close enough to an objective you want to try and steal from the enemy, they'll be able to make that charge from the enemy, because they need to come on within 6 inches of the board edge and 9 inches away from an enemy unit, which means they're only fairing that charge on double 1. They get in there, they can probably do a lot of damage if it's a lightly defended unit, kill them, take that objective. And that is a threat your opponent is going to have to deal with every turn, as long as you've got the command points left and the heroes left to be able to do that command ability to bring on those summoned units. And it's really good, but it also means that you have versatility if you want to bring on Marauder Horsemen, if you want to bring in a cultist unit for like, oh, my back objectives are going a bit lightly defended there, I want to quickly summon on some Iron Golems of them. Even just a unit of 10 is going to make them very survivable to hold that back objective. It just gives you that flexibility and a bit of a toolbox in the army. So it gives you excuse to get your Warcry models that you may really like the look of, and generally are fantastic in the game. You can find uses here. You've got your Chaos Marauder Horsemen that are very fast. Bring them on. The great thing with them is they have a shooting attack, which I believe is 12-inch range, and they're 9 inches away from the enemy, right? So they can shoot when they come on as well, which is great. And then those Marauders are just auto-charge and get those objectives. So your army is very hero, mortal focused, so basically Chaos Lords. And then it's also going to be quite toolbox focused as well. And then obviously you can put the rest of your army as whatever suits your flavour. Like the army I said that I came out on my list is basically most of its combat power, apart from 2 units of Chaos Knights, are in the heroes. It has 2 Chaos Lord and Carcadrax, Chaos Lord on Demonic Mount, I believe, a Manticore and a Chaos Lord on foot, and then Be'lakor. So like, it's so much focused in the heroes, and that's because I also had the Blood Marked Warband, which means when one of those heroes kills an enemy model in that combat phase, I can pick another unit of mine that's also in the battalion, wholly within 12 inches of that hero, which gives them +1 to their attacks. So you can see how I can really build into the heroes by taking Ravagers. So it means that when you're starting the army and you might want to go towards Ravagers, that could be a good excuse for you to buy those cool characters you want to build and paint up. It gives you an excuse to do it. You want to have 2 car contracts, go for it. Really, really cool stuff. So then, talking about the next sub-legions, which is going to be Kabulis, all about magic and wizards, right? So where before when I was going up Chaos Soldier Lord, a lot of the times an auto include, but not always, and the same with the Chaos Soldier Lord and Manticore. It's going to be an auto include in Kabulis for sure. Definitely when I've been building lists for them, that's how I've been doing it. And then it also plays a lot on endless spells, which is something we haven't talked about yet in this video, which again, I've reviewed all the endless spells. Go check out that video if you'd like to get an in-depth review there. But what we will do with endless spells here is talk about, do you really need them in this army? And generally, the Slave's Darkness endless spells are pretty damn good, because one of them, the Realmscape Rapture, is just an endless spell you set up. It's not bound to you, of course. The enemy can still move it in between battle rounds, but it can only move in one direction. So you can set it up in one direction, facing the enemy, and then it can only move forward. So that means the enemy can't turn it around and use it back on you, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And then actually in Kabulis, you're going to want to have quite a few like endless spells on the board, because essentially you can, there's ways for you to move them in more than just when they're set up and in between battle rounds. You can move them in your hero phases and stuff, making blood sacrifices, and you can also get pluses to cast in this sub-allegiance of Kabulis. So you want to have quite a few endless spells in Kabulis, and another great one for the Slaves of Darkness is going to be the Darkfire Demon Rift, which is the one basically the chaos symbol with the demonic head in the middle of it, spewing fire out of its mouth, because that gets more powerful depending on how many wizards are in range of it and how many endless spells are in range of it. So it's a win-win there, and you can do more wounds to the enemy and additional mortal wounds depending on how many endless spells and wizards were in range of it. The other thing to say in Kabulis is essentially, how do you get to move these endless spells, additional movement and everything else, and how do you get plus to the cast? Well, there's a lot of sacrifice in the army. It's all about sacrificial stuff, you know, for the greater good. Some of the weaker members of the Slaves of Darkness must lay down their lives to, I don't know, improve the odds of the Kabulis when in their battles. It seems a bit of a backwards mechanic, but that's what they have to do. So things like cultists, or like the Splinter Fang, where you can bring us snake model back to that unit every turn if you have like the snake charmer, wherever how it works, can be a good unit to use for the sacrificing, right? And the same with marauders and stuff like that, so it can increase your chances of wanting to have those units in your army. And then it really depends on what you want to have buffed by your magic, what really makes the most out of it, because you'll be able to get that in the army to very good use and effect. It also means that your spell lore spells that are great for nerfing your enemy, for teleporting as well. So if you want to teleport a block of 40 marauders to your enemy's front door turn 1, just to be the first wave to charge them and do a lot of damage, which is a very good tactic, you can get pluses to cast now. So that's no longer just a flat 7 you need, you can get pluses. You can also have a Demon Prince in your army, make him Zeech, and then use his command ability, I believe that's how it works. And then he makes one of your wizards get another +1 to cast. So there are different ways you can build into this as well. Going on to the next sub-allegiance is going to be the Spoilers. Now, the Spoilers is all about Demon Princes, to the point where you want at least one and he has to be your general. Doesn't have to be, but you want to make the most of it, he's your general. And the list that I really want to try at the moment is 5 Demon Princes and Bellicor, right? Because the Demon Princes have ways to heal, they have ways to ignore damage to themselves as well, and they can do command abilities, additionally what they get from this sub-allegiance, which is absolutely fantastic. And even if you go, well, if you've got 5 Demon Princes in your army in Bellicor, that's most of your army points just invested there, you know, because Demon Princes are 210 points. Demon Princes are an absolute steal for 200 points. And to be honest, one of the units I should have mentioned when I talked about almost an auto-include, because Demon Prince for that point are brilliant, because they always fight first in the combat phase. Again, if you go against an enemy with a similar ability, look to see how it works, blah, 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 blah. But apart from all that crap aside, they always fight first, right? They're immortal champions. Demon Princes are absolutely epic in the lore. They've been around for sometimes hundreds of years. They've been fighting most days of their lives. So you can see how well trained they are, and that makes them so, like, impossibly good champions to fight in battle, right? So they get that. And then if you've got 5 of them in your army, that's 5 of your models that can do quite a bit of damage as well, always attacking first. So they can be your hammer in your army, and then you can add your battle line, all that sort of thing. Let's say that's like at least 300 points later, roughly, or 270 points. You want to go just Chaos Warriors, minimum units, but there's a lot more you can play onto that as well. If you want to make one of your Demon Princes Khorne, obviously if you're all Khorne marks, makes things easier. You can make the enemy half their movement as well, which is absolutely fantastic. You pair that with the Realmscape Rapture, which I say that spell just goes in one direction. That also does more wounds to the enemy and makes them half the movement. You can really bugger them up because the Demon Prince makes them half their run and charge rolls off the top of my head, and then that end of spell makes them half their movement. So it can work really, really well and hold the enemy down in place. The spoilers, it's all about your Demon Princes, but the other thing to say there, which is cool, it's about your monsters as well. You want to take some of the cool monsters and Slaves to Darkness. There's ways to make them heal. I believe it's on a 4-up in each of your hero phases. They can heal D3 wounds, right? Apart from the Mutated Vortex Beast, which can only heal 1 because it already has a inherent ability to heal D3, which kind of sucks because it's just like, oh, a way to make the Mutated Vortex Beast even better. And then Games Workshop's like, no, we do not want that taking over the meta. I don't know how it would take over the meta, but here we are. So only 1 wound for it, but it's still good, right? And it shows that it's a way to take those monsters. Even one of your Mindsetter like Sharanks, or that like Sphinxy, basically the Pussycat, might seem small, but it's still a monster, so it can heal those wounds as well. So yeah, it's a very like monster and demon focused one, but also not to the point where it's like mortal units don't really have a place in it apart from they have to be in it. They fit in very well, just as well, and it works really nice. It was my favourite sub-allegiance when the book first came out, and now it's probably my joint second, as I'm really loving the host of the Everchosen at the moment. And talking about that, moving on to the host of the Everchosen. Now, quite simply, this is your sub-allegiance if you want to go as elite as you can in your army. For example, today I'm actually playing a game in a few hours, and my host of the Everchosen army has got 12 models in it. So you can really kind of see the theme we're going here. And that's because it is Archaon sub-allegiance. This is the one you put Archaon in. You want to take Archaon in your army, you go for this sub-allegiance. Again, there's argument to say he could be in the spoilers to try and heal wins, but really to make the most of him, put him host of the Everchosen, right? And you're not just putting him in there, because it's all about your Varangard as well. So if you want to play Archaon and friends, basically, with Archaon and as many Varangard as you want, you make your Varangard so much better. There's ways to make a unit of Varangard. It can auto parlay attack twice if it wants to, because it's got a once per game ability. I go Khorne, right? Which means that I make my Varangard have, they have 6 attacks each, so a unit of 3, that's 18 attacks. I go 6 circles, well, so they get +1 to their damage on the charge, right? So that's 18 attacks that are hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s because it's Khorne, wounding on 2s because it's Khorne, re-rolling 1s, -1 rend, 2 damage on the charge. And at least 9 out of 10 times, I make the enemy have to roll 18 save rolls because I'm hitting and wounding on 2s and re-rolling both those. So I'm very rarely failing that unless I'm rolling a lot of double 1s, which, you know, please, that doesn't happen in the game I've got later tonight. I really, really need this. But so that means I make the enemy make 18 save rolls. For every one they fail, they take 2 damage, right? So that will turn to 36 damage they could take, and then I can make my unit parlay attack twice again, right? Which then, if the enemy was to fail that, really unfortunately again, which I know only -1, not that much, but it means that they could take a possible 72 damage from a unit of 3 Varangard. If you want more details on how all that tech works, please watch my review of them in the unit section, where I talked about Varangard for about half an hour, to be honest, with myself and a good mate of mine, Jamie. So you can go check that out if you want more tech there. But it shows how I run them, right? So, but generally, host the Everchosen, it's all about Archaon and your Varangard, and really, whatever points you have left over is how to buff everything else. Like, for example, in the list I'm trying out tonight, I've got a Chaos on a foot to make Archaon fight twice, and then Be'lakor to bugger up one of the enemy's best units that I can. So it works really quite well for me. It's not the list I generally take my host of the Everchosen, but I can put like the strengths in there, shall we say, to make an enemy unit fight last, which can be really good because then I can dogpile it with all the Vanguard, and it works very, very well. Yeah, it's my favourite one at the moment. It basically, if you want to run Archaon, you go, it's a big name character, it's 800 points, is he really worth it? He is in this sub-allegiance, in my honest opinion. You're getting so many command points. Your army isn't running away. So if you want to go like a really cool theme with your army is that, you know, basically they're fearless, they don't run. That's like their cool story in their lore, whatever, for insert reason. It's the one for you because nothing will run away. For example, my Sineshta, they are the embodiment of perfection, and they really believe it to the point where they'll have great comradeship with the rest of their warriors from their Temple of Sinesha army. But if one of them dies, obviously he wasn't perfect, so they don't care, which means it's great for me to run my Sinesh army in it because it means that I won't be taking any battle shock, and it really fits my lore. So I absolutely love it, and as I'm using it at the moment on Tabletop Simulator, as I can't play real games in the world at the moment, I'm running it as Khorne to make my reliability so strong. It also means that Archaon is hitting on 2s, rerolling 1s, and winning on 2s, rerolling 1s for most of his attacks. That means so much more reliable, and I think that's, to be honest, why I love Khorne at the moment, and it pains me as a Sinesh player to say this. It's just because my luck cannot always be great, right? And I know that's the same for a lot of people out there, especially in Warhammer. So what I've absolutely loved is just the reliability of going like, oh, I could do like 18 attacks and they can all do 2 damage each on the charge from the Vanguard, and then I roll my dice and go, oh, I've got nothing but 2s or nothing but 1s, right, to hit. So it's just failed. Disappointment, basically. Fed up with disappointment. So when you get all those rerolls, it means you get what you want most of the time. So that's why I really, really like it. Okay, and then going on to the next sub-allegiance is going to be from the Wrath of the Everchosen book, which was the Knights of the Empty Throne. And this, again, is all about your Vanguard if you don't want to take Archaon. If you don't want Archaon, the whole point of this, Knights of the Empty Throne. The Vanguard are the Knights. The throne is empty because it's Archaon's throne, and he will not sit on it until he has conquered all the mortal realms in the name of chaos. So he's not here. So your Vanguard become heroes, and they can be absolute beasts. So really, if you want to go Vanguard heavy but you don't want Archaon, go for that one. And that's really all I'm going to say about that one too much. Throughout, you come up with your own imagination. And then the next one we have is the Idolaters, right? And they are all about being zealots, essentially. And they are the sub-allegiance, which a lot of people give them a lot of stick because Games Workshop is incredibly lazy with writing their rules in the Marathi book, unfortunately. And I do agree with them, but people do say, like, oh, they can't even win any games. I played, I think, 6 games with them, and I won 5 out of 6 games. So, like, I managed to do pretty well with them. And that's not a boast. That's more just me saying that. They're not as shit as everyone makes out. Do give them a chance. And what that allows me to do with them is really play on their strengths, which was you want 2 war shrines at least in there. So you want to go really war shrine heavy. This is the one for you, the Idolaters, because, like I said, those prayers you get from war shrine, fantastic. Go off on 3s. In Idolaters, you get +1 to that roll. So you only failed it on 1s, which means that it's so reliable, which was great for when I wanted to turn 1, teleport 40 marauders into the enemy with reroll save rolls and reroll hit rolls and wound rolls. Fantastic, right? The other thing to say about it is it gives your cultist units, so your Warcrier, Warband sort of stuff, you know, Splinterfang, Iron Golems, etc., the charge bonus, which the Marauders have, which is when you roll your charge roll, turn the lowest result to a 6. However, unless there's a certain one out there, off the top of my head, they don't have like any horn blowers or trumpeters or, you know, drummers or anything in the cultist units, which means you're not getting that +1 to charge with the Marauders again. So it's not as good, but it's pretty much as good. So it means you want to make the most of your cultists, this is the one for you. And also, if you want to make a chariot hero, so you get a cheap hero for a massive base in your army, and it's also a priest, this is the one for you as well. And with that, guys, I kind of wanted to end the video here because, like I said, this was telling you about your basics with Slaves of Darkness and how to build up an army of them and really how you want to playstyle them, because there's just so many different ways to go. And this, to be honest, this video's gone on for a lot longer than I thought it would. And I think really that's because it's an army I have a lot of experience about and a lot of passion about. So if it's an army that I personally don't play, I don't know, Fire Slayers as an example, it may not be as long, so just bear that in mind. But really, above everything else, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found something useful in it. If you agreed with my points, let me know that down below. But also, if you disagree, let me know. If you think I've got something wrong, please let me know again, because we all learn from each other, right? So let me know that in the comments. Also, I want to say, as this is the first of a series, I would really appreciate if you really smash that like button, because that's going to personally let me know that this is a video series worth continuing, because for me to cover armies that I don't personally build and paint and collect and play games with, it's going to take a lot of research into knowing what is the right way to collect them. So I need to know that this is a series worth continuing, and a simple way you can do that is just like it, and if you want to comment something nice, that's always lovely to hear your thoughts. What I will say though is, if you haven't subscribed already, please smash that subscribe button, and make sure already, if you have, hit that bell notification. It means you will never miss a video of mine, and all of this is absolutely fantastic. It's all free for you guys to do, won't cost you a dime, and is a huge way to support the channel, which I really do appreciate when people do that. The next thing I want to say is, again, a huge shout out to my Patreons, which of course is going to be my Morgasts, which is Sandback and Johnathan H and Fliq. Guys are there tier, you're absolutely smashing it. Thank you for your huge support there. It really does make the channel go forward. My Vampires, which is Mia, Martin S, Rouse321, Max T and David A. Guys, you're really helping there as well. Keep it up, please. And then, of course, my Necromancers, which is Jacq.l, RadiationRiley, AW77, Die Sagas, WolfNick, Michal W, and Quad. Guys, all of you is the reason why I can continue to make these videos and try and help as many people with their Age of Sigmar journey as much as possible. So huge shout out to you guys. And if you're watching this and you enjoy the video, make sure to thank these guys, as they make it truly possible for me to continue this channel. What I will also like to say on a side note to that is that if you would like to support the channel, you'll find a link to my Patreon at the top of the description down below. And of course, you don't have to sign up to anything, but if you were to consider it, I would hugely appreciate that. Like I say, every single dollar that I get from that goes straight back into the channel. It's allowing me to do investments like I've got, you may have seen recently, new editing software so I can make the videos more dynamic. I've got a new microphone to help out, and I managed to get a channel logo, which is these are all things that within the last 6 months I've managed to do to boost the channel, and it was because of these guys I managed to be able to justify doing that. So huge thank you to all of you. If you'd like to consider, you're an absolute hero. And what I'd also like to say, beyond anything else, is I really hope that this video has helped you decide on how to start collecting your army. If I can summarize it for you, can't really go wrong with getting that start collecting box, and there's so many other things there out for flavor. But if you were to ask me what do I definitely need, start collecting box, maybe boost either of those battle lines. You want to be really competitive, go Marauders for now, but definitely get better core. Definitely a hero you want, and also a Chaos Lord on foot and a Sorcerer Lord on foot. Why not? They can all be good. And if you've got any more questions about start collecting Slaves of Darkness, please put them in the comments down below. I'd be happy to help you out as much as I can. So until next time, guys, remember to stay safe, wear a mask, wash your hands, stay hygienic for God's sake, so that means that we can all start gaming in real life again. Can't wait until that day. And of course, more importantly, remember that Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.